Right, so back on these cabinets, and I've sanded back the better one now. So I've gone over it, had to be quite brutal with it, with some 80 grit first, and then finishing off with some 240 because they were pretty bad. I've filled this joint because it was fairly open, and sanded that back. We are through the veneer in a couple of places, which was kind of unavoidable really, but it's not the end of the world because these aren't just going to get waxed or oiled, they're going to get stained first. So things like that where we've gotten really close up here, there for example, that'll all disappear. But yeah, you can see the moisture damage that's got in there. That's where the black is coming from. Obviously the grain as well, but the mottled effect, you know, I can't sand any further through that, because you can see here how thin we're getting to the chipboard underneath. But like I say, once we stain that, that'll all blend in and things like that as well. So yeah, I've sanded the back as well. The chipboard on this one and the other had puffed up, so I've concentrated around the edges to blend them in a bit more. But yeah, nice and smooth now, so all good. Round the front, this is, as you can see, the join just about. This is real wood, which is good, so I've managed to sand this out quite a lot, and the insides as well. So I'll probably paint the insides of this black and then sand it again, which will give us a lovely kind of paint edge then. And obviously the back will get painted black as well, so I'll roller satin black on this, and then give the cabinets probably another quick sand with 400 grit, which will then give us a really nice paint edge, and then they can be stained, and I'll probably go over them with some shellac polish, but I'm not going to do any painting on this obviously until I've cut the front baffles out and got our new baffles ready to fit in there. So yeah, progress is being made. The insides of the cabinets are all re-glued with some watered down PVA that soaks right in, and then some blocks added in as well. I'm going to add some bracing in too, but I won't do that until I've cut the baffle, the original baffle out. So yeah, coming along. And this one has been clamped and gluing overnight, so I'll need to put some filler on that, but I'll give it a coarse sand first, and hopefully we're about there. So the front baffle fits in there now. I've cut out the old baffle, which was not very easy. I need to run the router, or the rabbit bit, round the edge of this to drop this in a little bit more, because I want it flush with the original cutout. So yeah, eventually there's going to be Velcro running all the way around this, and we'll screw through the front as well, because all the drivers are going to be mounted from behind. Ultimately, if you ever need to maintain or repair this, you'll need to remove the front baffle. Chances are the crossover will be mounted on the other side of this. I've got space there for part of the crossover as well if need be. So next job really is to install a load of bracing inside the cabinet. Right, so I've had these clamped, or glued and clamped, for well over 24 hours now, and the bit at the bottom, it's closed up I think as much as it's going to. It's still a teeny bit puffed up there, so but it's not soft anymore, so I'm going to have to be careful. But our front bezel joint is nice and closed up now, so that's good. So I'll have to fill that and sand that out. And then the other corner here, which was really blown open, has come up quite well. Looks like they've been varnished. Yeah, so anyway, that's closed up quite well now, so obviously I'll sand these back and get some wood filler in there and sand them again. But yeah, I think this cabinet is stabilised. As you probably saw earlier, I've gone around the inside with glue thinned down with some water, so it really penetrates the chipboard and locks everything back in, and I've put some blocks in there. I'm going to put some bracing in there but after I've cut out the original front baffle. And then yeah, I think we're kind of ready then to start getting our new baffles fitted. Obviously I'll sand this back as well, like I've done with the other one over there, and then yeah, carry on. But yeah, quite a bit of work to these. So this is the back of the bad cabinet, the one that had been, or had quite a bit of moisture damage. This chipboard had really puffed up. The majority of it is sanded out quite nicely, but the problem is once the moisture gets into it, it just breaks up the glue, and you just end up with all the bits of particle wood that normally are bonded together with glue, I guess. But it's not too bad. I've feathered out all the edges, and this is nice and flat now. So what I need to do to stop, every time I sand these just break up more, so I need to get a load of glue soaked into this to strengthen it back up again, and then I can sand that out, because when I paint that, that's not going to look particularly good. But yeah, it's probably going to be alright actually. So yeah, more PVA. Right, so there we go. I've just brushed around that with glue. Let that soak in. That will stick all the fibres back together, and then it can be sanded again. And then when I paint this, that will probably need 2 or 3 coats, which will soak in and lock it all together as well. So yeah, coming along. Right, so both of these are now all sanded up, and as you can see, there is significant moisture damage that's gotten to these, so these darker parts won't come out, and if I keep sanding, I'm just going to go straight through the veneer. The veneer is pretty thin in places. Here I've sort of gone through it a bit, so they'd been varnished I think before, so these had probably seen a bit of wear and tear, and someone had sanded them back in the past and done something, you know, oiled them, stained them to try and tidy them up. That's that corner repair that I clamped, glued and filled now, so the stain will pick up this filler, so that will pretty much disappear. So I have to stain this, I can't just oil it. I'm going to have to do it in something slightly darker, which will disguise this. But yeah, otherwise they've come up pretty well. The back I've glued, so all of this is no longer loose, so that can be painted. So I'm going to roll over this with some satin black, and then once that's done, they'll get another quick sand all the way round, and also this front inner edge, I've still got to tidy this up a bit, will get painted as well, and then yeah, a final quick sand, probably with some 400 grit, something like that. But yeah, otherwise the cabinets are kind of there, so then it's to fit the baffles and yeah, start building them up and getting the crossovers done. Right, so all these drivers need gaskets, because the woofers, for example, are being mounted behind the baffle. So I'm going around this with felt, so this stuff, which I use tons of, as you've probably seen in other videos. So that sits ever so slightly proud of the metal, so by the time the metal is screwed down tight against the ply, this will scrunch up and make a really good seal. These Ditton woofers have a habit of the glue giving up, or the double-sided tape that's used to hold the suspension to the chassis. So I've checked that, and any loose parts re-glued, but then obviously this as well is reinforcing that, and when it's screwed in, it's going to sandwich that and hold it too. So yeah, I've got to do that with all the drivers. Yeah, it takes a bit of time really. It's all these little bits that really do take the time, and it's really easy to underestimate just how long these speakers take to do, really, especially when you're kind of building something unique. So yeah, I will plod on. So baffles fit in there nicely. As you can see, I've finished flush with the original rebate that's here. and that leaves me about 12mm for a cover. So I want the cover to finish sort of here. So we'll see. So I'm going to go around this in Velcro and then screw through to pick up the original baffle cut out of the back. But yeah, once they're painted up and the drivers are in there, I think they're going to be pretty mega. Yeah, I'm expecting quite a big wallop from these. So yeah, there's a lot of work to these, but they're coming along well. So I'm sorry this is all very much wobbly cam, but the problem is I'm doing this in between client work, and time is always the enemy. So setting up the camera and that sort of thing at the moment is a bit time consuming, so I'm sort of just shooting video clips as I progress. Yeah, so anyway, I've marked out where all of my front baffle fixing holes are going to be and drilled them out and countersunk them, and at the same time flattened the baffles off, sanded out the cutouts again so they're ready to be painted again. Then on the cabinets, I've now installed the gasket material all the way around, so we'll seal up nicely against our baffle. So next thing to do, and also on the backs here I've drilled out the holes for all the fixing screws for the drivers as well. So really the next thing for me to do is to get a few coats of spray on these, let that go off, and then it's really a case of mounting the drivers, wiring them, throwing the wires out the back of the cabinets, and then measuring and testing to build our crossover for these. So yeah, that's going to get quite involved. We have the drivers all complete there. Next thing I'll probably do is take out the old banana plug push connections there and add in some new binding posts, so you can put a banana plug in those or bare wires. I need to then test out the switches, see how our contacts work, because based on that, that's going to tell me how I need to do my resistors to attenuate the mid-range and the tweeter. And yeah, then we can start putting them all back together. As I showed you earlier, these are all now felt gasket fitted, so ready to go in. Yeah, progress is being made. Right, so the mid-range drivers need enclosures, and in the Ditton 44, in the Ditton 22 and the 33 that these are used in, I think from memory the enclosures probably about 2 litres, 3 litres, something like that. So anyway, what I found is that the cardboard tubes from these Wharfdales actually is a reasonably snug fit around the inside of these mid drivers, so I'm actually going to reuse them and stick them to the back of the mid drivers. So that saves me creating a separate enclosure, and it also means that I can fix the drivers in without having then a box removable to get to the drivers. So these will kind of be one unit. Obviously if this mid-range fails, you're going to have to take it off of this card tube anyway. So yeah, I think it's going to work. So I've chopped these down on the chop saw, taken them down probably about 2 inches. I will fill them with polyfill. The good thing with card is it's quite dead, so it works well for these. Now, some of you may notice that I've cut the card at a slight angle, and that's on purpose. So when the mid driver is fixed to the baffle, these card tubes are going to push out a little bit, and the reason for that is I'm quite tight, this side, quite tight here. So rather than the tube being 90 degrees to the baffle, it's just going to lean out a little bit so we don't catch the side or anything. It's ever so slight, but it will just make life a little bit easier. So yeah, so I'm going to just double check these mid drivers, make sure everything's good with them, because that'll be a bit of a shit if I stick them all in and then put them in the enclosures and start testing and there's a problem. And then I can fix all the drivers to the backs of the baffles that are now painted, and then yeah, start crossover voicing. Right, so I've mounted the two woofers and the tweeter into the baffles. I'm waiting for my adhesive to go off on the mid-range, and I've just test fitted the baffle just to see how they're looking, and yeah, loving it. So I've still got to sand all this back again where I've painted it black, and probably give the back another coat as well. Like I say, eventually I will go around this with Velcro, which will cover up our screws, although I might screw through the Velcro, but I'm not too sure. That would be the better idea, and then obviously taking it apart's a lot easier. But yeah, everything's gone in there quite nicely, really. I like the look. They look like the sort of thing you'd find in a studio, really. But yeah, I'm liking it. I think they're going to be pretty darn good. Right, so both binding post cups have been fitted with new binding posts, all brass, so all good. What I've done is retained the old speaker connector as well that these have got in the back, as you can see there. And the thinking behind that is, A, you could use it, but B, if you were going to add a subwoofer to these, that would be a good pickup point for your speaker level output. You could make up a lead to go to your sub, or subs, even better. But yeah, I just thought I'd leave it in there. It's not going to do any damage. So yeah, all good. So just fitting the mid-range enclosures. They screw in nicely. The card is adhered to the mid really well, but I'm gluing on some MDF. I've sanded or rounded this off with the sander and glued these blocks to the card. So we've also got a fixing screw there and there, so that's just going to help hold the card so it's not just relying on the glue bond to the woofer, sorry, to the mid. So if ever you want to take this mid out, 6 screws and out it comes. And what I'll probably do is put some foam on the back of this as well, so when it's screwed, when the baffle's screwed in, there's a bit of pressure pushing on the back of this as well. We shall see, but yeah, all good. Righty-ho. So I'm at the point now where I'm getting some stain on these, so I'm using a kind of stain that will give us a satin finish at the end. I've given them one coat, and it's a case of brush applying it and then kind of going over it with a soft pad, just to sort of get rid of all the brush marks and things, and then it soaks in, and then I'm just building up the coat. So where we've gone through the veneer, or where it had been gone through, because it was pretty evident that these have been sanded back before and then painted with a dark varnish. That will darken up, so there's quite a obvious bit there. So I'll have to see how that works out. I might have to, after it's had 2 or 3 coats, if that's still obvious, which it shouldn't be, look to tint that or something. So yeah, not a problem, but really they're coming up really nicely. I'm really happy with them. So it's going to be quite a process of just going over these with the stain, the oil, and then yeah, building up coats and see where we get to. But yeah, really and truly, they're beginning to look pretty tidy already. So these will have Velcro running around them, which will disguise our join, and then we'll make some covers for them. But yeah, they're looking pretty good. I'm really pleased with them. I'll also make some feet for them as well, probably to get them like 8 inches off the ground. Probably some 3x3, a foot in each corner. But yeah, so I've got my lead wires hanging out the back, so I'm ready to get the crossovers designed and built. So lots of measuring, and like I say, I'm hoping to use the Ditton 22 crossover For the tweeter, mid and upper woofer, I'll probably have to adjust it, and plus I want to change the crossover frequency if the tweeter will play down a bit lower, just to help with these imaging a bit better, because they are a big baffle. So we'll just have to see how that works out. But yeah, really pleased with them. They're looking pretty monstrous, really. So yeah, all good. Anyway, that's going to be the end of part 2. Part 3 will be all the measurements, crossover work, and final assembly, basically.